I tried using the traditional keyboard and mouse first-person shooter aim trainer Kovaaks to practice my aim for Splatoon 3 for the Nintendo Switch, a game famously not available to play with a keyboard and mouse, and also a third-person game, and full of its own unique mechanics. Huh? Okay, let's back it up a bit with some story time. Real quick though, I've got something to reveal. I've had a custom character design for quite a while, but now I can finally show it off in videos. I like my yapping segments, so hopefully they could be more expressive now. I can point at stuff, I can be all excited, I can think, I can cry, awesome stuff. Huge thank you to Enya for their work on these. Credit and link to their Blue Sky will be in the description. I'm super happy to have these. They did a great job, and you can expect to see these more going forward. Anyway, on with the video. I am a competitive Splatoon player, and I have been for basically a decade. Most of my playtime over the years has been in some of Splatoon's most gimmicky weapons, relative to classic shooter standards anyway, such as Inkbrush and Slosher. A few months ago, I came to terms with the fact that all my time spent on weapons like that was restricting my ability to refine mechanical skills like my aim and movement to levels of precision and consistency that the truly best players possess. As such, I challenged myself for at least the remainder of that year to go completely without playing any weapons like that, instead playing only the most standard weapon classes of shooters, dualies, and splatlings. I made a video about this decision if you want to know more, but basically, it was for the explicit purpose of pushing myself to develop the mechanical skills I felt I was lacking, and improving mechanics has been the primary goal of my practice time ever since. I've played plenty of X-Rank and tournaments with these restrictions, and there's no doubt that I felt my skills improving, but perhaps not quite to the degree that I was hoping for, and at least in my opinion, it's because even with the right focuses, getting quality practice hours with consistent feedback on mechanics in Splatoon is inherently difficult. Sure, there's the online lobby, but trust me, you memorize the positions of these dummies very quickly, and the moving ones aren't necessarily testing your tracking reflexes with this movement pattern. Fighting real players in real matches is obviously much better, but there's a few issues there too when it comes to considering quality practice. For one, no matter the game mode you choose to queue into, they can take a long time to find, have variable skill ranges, and you have no control over the kinds of weapons you play against. There's not really much consistency to it. Beyond that though, most time spent in a game of Splatoon isn't actually spent engaged in 1v1 fights. There's turf and objective to worry about, time spent on the respawn pad, and more. All the while you're keeping track of your 4 opponents and 3 teammates and their specials and all that. That's all to say that in the context of a match, there is way too much to keep track of to stay dialed in on only one aspect or skill the entire time. For FPS esports, avoiding those problems is the main appeal of aim trainers like Kovaaks and aim labs. While it's not ideal to practice skills for one game within a completely different game, since you'll never perfectly replicate or account for all the game's specific mechanics, it's still worthwhile because getting to customize your practice in simplified scenarios catered to the exact skills you want to improve on is just that effective. You want to practice tracking far distance moving targets? There's scenarios for that. You want to practice quick, precise flick shots? There's scenarios for that. Slow, stable tracking? Target conversion between multiple targets? You get the point. You get to lock in on that skill for a minute or more with no interruptions, receive immediate feedback on your performance with your score, and can go right again after if you want to. Shooter games just don't have tools of this level in-game, but again, in most cases these are keyboard and mouse FPS gamers using these aim trainers to improve. Splatoon is quite different from classic shooter games, and again, it's played on a completely different controller scheme. How much does that matter? Can you even play these aim trainers in a way that feels comparable to Splatoon? Well, as I learned from the Splatoon player Fern, not only can you easily connect a Pro Controller to Steam to play these games, but with the right settings you can also quite closely replicate the feel of how the camera controls in Splatoon with gyro controls. Fern is also working on his own video about external aim training for Splatoon, and I'll link it below as soon as it's out so you can learn more if this interests you. Don't get me wrong, it'll never be perfect, but in my opinion, it gets close enough to feel familiar. So with all that set up, and with the recommended scenario playlist from Fern, I set out on a new mission. For 1 month, I'd play Kovaaks with my Switch Pro Controller every day, with 2 main goals. Short term, I wanted to see if I can improve my scores within the aim trainer on the scenarios I was playing. Basically, I wanted to see if any kind of skills were being picked up or improved upon with time. Second, and more importantly, at the end of the month, if I did improve within Kovaaks, would any of that transfer over to Splatoon? Here's a daily rundown of how my sessions went. Day 1. To start things off, I played through every scenario in the playlist once just to get a feel for them, and in terms of scores, wow, I am not doing good. There's a lot to get used to and learn, but at the same time, it is comical to see myself getting single-digit percentile placements on some of these leaderboards. Also, ouch, because once I was nearing the end of the playlist, my arms were hurting. This stuff is intensive. Day 2. I didn't realize the playlist order would be randomized each time, but I think I like that. Near the beginning of the session, I was getting a lot of lower scores than day 1, but near the end, the opposite was true. Perhaps this is an indicator that warming up is important. What a concept. Day 3. So to directly read the note I made for myself, tech issues. I am tilting, bad. Yeah, I wasn't having fun. For some reason my Procon kept disconnecting and pausing the game, and in general felt really inconsistent, certainly a low point for morale. Day 4. I saw a lot of score improvements in tracking scenarios, but I think this is in large part from me realizing how much accuracy impacts score, so I would actually release the firing button sometimes when I knew I was off target. Not a bad skill to have though. Day 5. More score improvements, but this time was different. I don't know what it was, but my visual focus suddenly felt much clearer in random moments. It wouldn't last long, but on basically every scenario in the playlist, I'd have spans around 10 seconds where everything but my targets felt blurry and far away. But without consciously bringing my crosshair a target, I was instinctively doing it anyway. I can only think this is what aim mental flow state feels like, and now I just want more of it. Having this happen after a few days of practice felt very promising. Day 6. By now, I had a good sense of which scenarios from Fern's playlist I did and did not like. The ones I did not like were either because the concept just didn't land for me, such as this one without a hit scan projectile that you actually have to lead shots on. You'd think this is great for Splatoon, but between the janky hit detection and the lack of a Splatoon-like crosshair that exists in 3D space, trying to control that projectile felt simply awful. Also, I'm pretty sure this is just because I'm on an old laptop, but my other problem was scenarios where the target was moving very fast and sporadically, because the model would glitch out a lot and make it genuinely disorienting to lock my eyes on. I don't think it's supposed to be like that. Anyway, all that's to say that going forward, I'll instead be running many reps of one scenario of my choice each day and really trying to push and understand it, starting with one that I personally find fun but challenging. My score went up a lot in the first few tries. It started going down a bit as I could feel my eyes getting tired from all the tracking. I'd certainly call that a win though. Day 7. Target transfer is a skill I know I lack in Splatoon, so let's hit it here. I know I have a tendency to split my aim between the two targets instead of settling onto one, and here I had a habit of moving off of one target before finishing it, which wasn't great. My best run today was 68th percentile of the leaderboard though, which is way above my current standards. Nice. Day 8. I both love and hate this scenario, and that's why I chose it. It feels so frustrating to play, and most of the time I do terribly, but brief moments of brilliance occur where I reach a flow state where I focus exclusively on the targets and not my crosshair. When that happens, I hit several clean shots in quick succession, then get surprised at that, which stops me back out. Still, the way the scenario seems to reward that state so heavily seems promising for training it. Day 9. Another scenario that feels like it really demands my eyes focus the right way. Most of my attempts for the day floated just below my previous best until suddenly one shattered it. Honestly couldn't even tell you what was different that time, but sure. And so these sessions continued on for the remainder of the month. At first I kept a log on my thoughts after each day, but with time, the comments for each day started to resemble each other, so you get the point. Warm up for the first few reps, then have some kind of score improvement, be it big or small. I began to repeat some of my favorite scenarios more as well as I got through them day to day. In the final week, I tried a few popular scenarios not on the initial list suggested to me, and I particularly fell in love with pressure aiming scenarios. I love how they put you under a time limit and force certain targets to be a higher priority than others. Or to say it more simply, I love how it adds mental pressure, just like the name suggests. It feels more comparable to how choosing targets in real games can be. And on the final day of day 30, I replayed the original playlist in full, both for fun and to see how many new personal best scores I could get on the scenarios I haven't touched since the beginning. And spoiler alert, it was nearly all of them. So with the month of daily Kovaaks over, what did I think of it? And do I think it helped me? Like I've been saying, I saw significant score improvements over the month on every scenario that I chose to keep up with. This is a pretty clear indicator that I was becoming a better aimer, at least within Kovaaks itself. What I mean by that is that at the end of the day, even aim trainers are games within themselves. There's no doubt that a lot of my score improvements came from me learning to predict each scenario more and get more comfortable with them, as well as learning more about how the scoring system works and ensuring us playing around their criteria. That's to say, my score tripling at one scenario by the end of the month compared to day 1 doesn't mean my aim got 3 times as good in the span of a month. I also don't think it means nothing either though. To talk more about that, let's bring it back around to the main question of this video and experiment. How is this aim training translated to Splatoon? And for that, I have a pretty strange answer. I can pretty confidently say that, so far, it has made my aim worse. But hear me out. At the time of recording, I think that since starting this aim training, my aim in Splatoon has gotten more inconsistent, which is saying something since feeling inconsistent was why I even started this journey. But I also think there's a clear and intentional reason for this. Throughout my aim training, all the short but sweet moments of flow state I achieved taught me a lot about how it feels to have good aim. And above all, there is one undeniable, consistent factor in those moments. That being that when my aim is truly locked in, my eyes are focused completely on my target, and importantly, they are not focused on my crosshair. When I'm focused on my target, I feel like I pick up on the subtle indicators of where they're about to start moving to much sooner, letting me follow them with my eyes even if they move sporadically, which should be a huge advantage for tracking ability. I also generally feel like my aiming motions are faster and more fluid when I'm not swapping between looking at my target and my crosshair, as that shift in focus every time does take time and introduces gaps where I'm not processing as much visual information about my target as I could be. This, again, sounds like it should be purely a good thing, and I'm almost certain that in the long term it will be. However, my issue right now that I think is making me more consistent is a direct consequence of me forcing this new way of visualizing what I'm fighting in Splatoon. And it's quite simple. When I'm fully focused on my target, and consciously not focused on my crosshair, it's quite difficult to keep track of where your crosshair actually is. And that's a problem when your crosshair's entire purpose is to show you where your shots are going to go, in effect, letting you know if they're going where you want them to. My previous aiming style in Splatoon was all about being aware of my crosshair, because on a weapon like Slosher, there's a lot of moments where you're aiming at positions that you expect opponents to be, not necessarily directing at enemies themselves. For that, making sure your shot is taking the angle and arc that you need it to is critical. So in this transition, I've been forfeiting one of my greatest aim strengths for the sake of improving one of my worst skills. In that way, it makes a whole lot of sense why I feel worse right now. But, both for the types of weapons I want to play going forward, and just in general for consistency and awareness, I fully believe that this trade-off will be worth it in the end. And if that does end up being true, then I have nothing but my Kovaak's training to thank for that. My understanding of aiming fundamentals and essentials grew so exponentially quickly in this 1 month compared to my years of in-game play, and for that I certainly think it was worth it. To finish this off, I want to address whether or not I think this is something I'd recommend other players to try. And for that, my short answer would be yes, but only if the journey I described here personally resonates with you. There are plenty of Splatoon players who have only played Splatoon who have much better aim than me, and did not encounter the same roadblocks I did with developing it. People like that probably already learned the lessons I did about aiming through the game itself, so this would likely not be revolutionary to them. There's also the fact that even being able to do this requires a specific setup and context. There's plenty of players out there who don't have both a PC and a Switch Pro controller, which at least as far as I'm aware are necessary for this. But even if you are a Splatoon player with these things, and even if you aren't a crazy good aimer, you also might just not care enough about optimizing your play to this extent, and that is also totally fine. Again, if you are specifically a Splatoon player with a high drive to improve, you feel like you struggle with similar aim skills as I described, and you have the equipment for this, then sure. I'd love to know how your experience goes, but otherwise, if that's not you, then at least hope sharing this experiment with you was entertaining in some way. Big thank you again to Fern for sharing this with me to give it a try, and as always, thank you for watching, and have a good one.